Good morning to you, and I'm quite sure you don't want to speak to Charlie Rowley, because frankly, who would, Michael? We've had enough of him on the show already this morning. Look, these polls...
You can never have enough Charlie Rowley. Charlie is one of the best-informed commentators in British politics. He's also, I've been told, though I haven't done it myself, great fun on a date.
Well, there you go. Well, I think that could be breaking news this morning. Look, what do you make of these polls this morning? Because, I mean, it's not just bad news for the Conservatives. It's consistent in all the polls now that you're looking at electoral wipeout.
Yes, it's not easy reading. Just a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is that, of course, politicians look at polls and we all draw conclusions from polls, but there's still 2 weeks left. And in that 2 weeks, we are still fighting for every vote, still making arguments about the issues that really matter, such as tax, which we might go on to in a moment. But the other thing also is, if these polls, which are just snapshots at the moment, if they do turn out to be accurate, it does raise a big worry for GB News viewers, which is what happens if Labour have a supermajority? What would an unchecked Labour government without a strong opposition do? What in their arrogance might they do in order to either rig the electoral system, stack public bodies, or shift this country in a way which was actually a sort of over-interpretation of their mandate?
But to talk about a super majority like that and to warn people against a super majority, it does sound as though you're conceding defeat, which then is completely at odds with what you just said, is that there's time to turn this around. So which is it?
Well, I'm keen to have a sort of a balanced conversation with people at this stage and to say, look, I very much hope that people will vote Conservative, and there are sound policy reasons for doing so, whether that's our record on education or the prospect of future tax cuts, whether that's the investment that we've made in defence or the economic growth that will come as a result of the business policies that we're putting forward. I want to make, and am making whenever I can, that strong case. And certainly, when I am with Conservative candidates out in the field, people are responding to the case that they are making. So I feel a sense of optimism about that. But at the same time, there are these opinion polls, and you entirely understandably ask me about them. And so my point is, well, I'm not convinced they're right. I really think it is possible that we can do significantly better than these polls indicate. But in fairness, if you ask me a fair question about them, I've got to say, well, if they are accurate, then I fear the consequences.
The problem is you've got to sort of know what you're voting for. You've got to be able to give people a clear message. Well, if you look at the track record of the Conservative Party over the last couple of years, there's no guarantee, even if the Tories got back into power, that actually Rishi Sunak's going to be in number 10 by the beginning of September, because there seems to be that much unhappiness within the party.
Well, I guarantee you this. If we win the election, which I hope we do, then Rishi will definitely be in number 10 this September and for years to come. More broadly, you make a fair point about, the Conservative record and have we been consistent. And yes, there was a bit of a blip, obviously, for 40-odd days after Boris and before Rishi. But I think that Boris's record, for example, on the vaccine rollout, on Ukraine and on levelling up, were achieved in lockstep with Rishi. It was Rishi who had the furlough scheme that was the sort of analogue or the matching policy alongside the vaccine rollout. It was Rishi who was the Chancellor who ensured that we could support Ukraine. It was Rishi who was the Chancellor who funded levelling up and has extended it subsequently as Prime Minister. So I do think that there has been continuity there on issues that matter, especially to GB News viewers.
Do you feel a weight of responsibility when you look at the polls out this morning, especially when you look at the red wall? Many people who lent the Tories their vote in 2019 now, according to these polls at least, going to swing back to Labour. Does that mean that you have failed in your mission to level up the north?
I don't think so, no. I mean, obviously it's concerning. Forgive me, the polls. But if one looks at, for example, Teesside, And I know that GB News has reported from Teesside consistently since its establishment. You'll see the establishment of GB News, that is, not the establishment of Teesside. But GB News has focused on, for example, what Ben Houchen has been doing, what Simon Clarke, the MP in Middlesbrough, has been doing, what Jacob Young has done for Redcar. They have brought investment in. The Freeport on Teesside has been responsible for the generation of thousands of jobs and hundreds of thousands, millions of investment. That is a big success. It's a result of Conservative leadership at every level. I could run through other areas that we've invested in, from Blackpool to Blythe, from Grimsby to Barry. But in all of these cases, it will be the voters, of course, who will reflect on whether or not we've done enough. I believe that we've made a difference for good. But again, the verdict of the voters is one which is the most important. And in the next 2 weeks, I'll be doing everything I can, whether it's in Teesside in the northeast or whether it's in the southwest, to reinforce that message of progress made and more to come.
Yeah, but you see, I'm fascinated by the fact, I mean, you mentioned investment in Blackpool. I mean, Blackpool's an area I know really well, and it is struggling beyond belief. I don't know when you were last there, but I mean, it needs urgent help.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's what we've been doing. So Blackpool has some of the worst housing stock, or had some of the worst housing stock in the country. Blackpool is a community that suffered because the principal job creator in Blackpool for generations has been tourism. And again, the tourism economy has shifted. But we've spent tens of millions of pounds transforming the heart of Blackpool, bringing in new investment, regenerating the town centre, and we've also provided investment for the further education college there in order to make sure that people have skills for the industries of the future. So it's not just about tourism, it's also about energy and renewables. And of course, there's a long way to go. But this is just proof of our determination to help a community that's been, as you quite rightly point out, overlooked in the past.
Mr Gove, why are you stepping down from politics when it's clear that your party needs you now more than ever?
Well, I'm not. It's very kind of you. But in a way, I think what our party needs is, like all parties, it needs renewal. And that's why I think that the next generation of Conservative leaders, people like Claire Coutinho, Laura Trott, Kemi Badenoch, they are the people who will carry the torch forward, and I will do everything I can to support them. But it's time for that generation, alongside Rishi Sunak, to revive, renew and re-energise the Conservative Party for its next phase in government.